Introduce our guest for this segment of our rolling coverage. Sharif Nashashibi is a journalist and Middle East analyst. Joins us, and we also have Sohail Notour from the Democratic Front of Palestine who joins us. I'd like to welcome you both. If I may first ask you, Sharif Nashashibi, what you think about this Operation Protective Edge, of which, there's so many examples of this being a disproportionate war. I'm wondering if you agree with that aspect of it, because obviously Israel and some media outlets claim and portray this in a way that Israel is the victim. There's no denying that obviously rockets are being fired from Gaza. At the latest count, it's over 1,300.
Well, Israel is being duplicitous in portraying this as a war against Hamas, because the vast majority, 80% actually, according to the UN, of casualties, of deaths, have been civilian. Over a quarter of those of deaths are children, and the children account for almost a third of injuries. And the civilian infrastructure has been shattered. Homes have been destroyed. The hospitals, mosques, power lines. The civilian infrastructure and civilians of Gaza are being targeted. This is not a war against Hamas. It's a war against the population of Gaza. And I think in terms of the ground invasion, if you look at developments this week, starting from the Egyptian ceasefire proposal, it looked almost scripted that Israel was vying for a ground invasion in a way that it would portray Hamas as a belligerent party, and Israel had no choice but to go in to invade Gaza. And this proposal, this Egyptian proposal, was presented to Hamas without consulting them. It was as if it's a fait accompli, and Hamas rejected the offer because of this, and notified Egypt that it wanted changes done. Egypt never modified the text. So then Netanyahu said, well, we have no choice but to invade. So this was scripted towards an invasion, and here we are now. And unfortunately, the civilian losses are going to skyrocket now that there's a ground invasion.
And it's interesting, you used the word scripted. I think some are saying that just from the mere fact of the time the settlers at that point that were announced to have been kidnapped, that was also scripted all the way up to what we're seeing now. But Sohail Notour, talk about this truce that's being worked on. We have the latest indicating that Mahmoud Abbas has traveled from Egypt and will be visiting Qatar and or Turkey first and then Qatar to, I guess, try to come up with some kind of truce here in order to end this. Can you give us your thoughts about this altogether? I mean, one of the aims of Israel has been to target this national unity government and put a wedge between Mahmoud Abbas and his Fatah party and Hamas. And at this point, it seems like Hamas is being targeted. I mean, talk about how they have been successful in that respect. Why is it that the national unity government is not working as one? Because here you have Mahmoud Abbas all the way by himself, from what we understand, separate from talks that are being held with Khalid Mashal and other parties, I guess perhaps Egypt in this case.
Well, I think we don't have to go back to talk a lot about the attempts to reach a unity government. This unity government is on the name of unity government, but it's practically a two-sided government accepted by Hamas and Fatah. It's not the complete unity because the other fractions didn't participate nor accept it. But at least they didn't want to make a fight about it when it was announced. And Mr. Mahmoud Abbas said it clearly that this is my government and there is no political program, it's my program. So unity is used here only to cover that we are against the dissension, which was for a long time, 7 years, people with their pressures in the street asking for the unity. It was the first step, but that doesn't mean it was confirmed and it was applied. One of the symbols that no one of the ministers after the foundation of this cabinet, no one visited Gaza, at least to be responsible on the sections they were in, except after the catastrophe and the carnage and a lot of casualties. So people, they need about the health care of the Palestinians in Gaza. So the Palestinian minister tried to visit, and even in the first expression of anger of the population, he left. So it's not, we can't speak about a government of unity. On the contrary, if it has to be practical government of unity, it has to be also under the auspices of the total leadership of the fractions in the Palestinian field. I mean, the high command of the Palestinian field, which was agreed in the negotiations for re-establishing the unity, was formed by a representative of Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Democratic Front, Popular Front, Fatah. So it's not asked for one session, one meeting, at least to decide how to behave and how to conduct the defense of our people in Gaza.
Well, they weren't really given a chance, and I'm sorry to jump in here. Let me ask my question to you one other way. Do you think that Hamas should have accepted a ceasefire?
Well, in principle, Hamas is accepting the principle of ceasefire because they are expressing themselves like the other Palestinian parties. We are not mongers of war. We want peace for our people, but the conditions of peace, that means to live in dignity. The first time in the struggle of Hamas, there was no settler colonialism inside Hamas, but there is a big siege continuously dragging the economy and the social capacities of Hamas, the Gaza Strip, to be suffocated. Now this is the moment to say, instead of waiting for a long time for small pieces of death, at least we have the right to live in dignity and to live in peace. So that's first. Second, they ask, or the demand of the Palestinians, by rejecting such kind of proposal of ceasefire for peace, which means truce for truce. No, we want real peace. We want means that the Israelis stop the blockade on Gaza and the free movement of the Palestinians in and out from Gaza, all access, and the delivery of the capacities to rebuild Gaza. Now, apart from this, there was an agreement before of ceasing fire in 2012. Including the clauses of that agreement was the protection of the people and the release of the prisoners. Until now, Israel is not doing anything, and they are not giving any kind of protection. It's repeated assaults and aggression from 1 year to 2 years.
Well, let's
of the main things of the condition
if you can
now
hold on to your
go
thoughts. I'm sorry. Let me bring in Sharif Nashashibi to get some reaction from you. Sharif, our guest there was I asked him about this this unity government, which Israel has targeted. It has been said that from the time that the settlers had disappeared and Israel started its the abductions there in the occupied territories, up to about 600 Palestinians who were abducted, that was one of the aims of Israel. I'm really curious to get your reaction, because Hamas has been made to be the bad guy here, given the fact of the way it was presented. As you mentioned, this ceasefire, first they found out about it through the media. But Hamas, one of the terms that it has presented is the fact that they want Israel not to target the national unity government. There's some other terms also that they have presented. But do you see that this national unity government is going to surpass this challenge that is being presented to them? This is the first big step. At this point, we're looking at Mahmoud Abbas and Hamas almost separated by what has gone on. Do you see them forging and coming out of this as a whole, as they announced weeks back that they were a national unity government in essence?
Unfortunately, I'm not very hopeful that that national unity government is going to survive this, because fundamentally, Fatah, or the Palestinian Authority, and Hamas have not acted in unity on this issue. You have very much Hamas doing its own thing in Gaza, and the Palestinian Authority really looking on and not doing very much else. And the two sides are not acting in unison. So I don't see really how this is going to survive. And there's no doubt that the target, Israel's target, was the national unity government from the beginning, when the Israeli teenagers were abducted. Israel, its response was disproportionate. The entire time it was trying to urge Mahmoud Abbas to ditch Hamas. So there was no doubt, and even from the moment the national unity deal was agreed, Israel was vehemently against this deal. So there was no doubt it was going to do anything it could and use anything as a pretext to destroy the national unity government. And unfortunately, the Palestinian factions have played into Israel's hands. Mahmoud Abbas had said that if Hamas was involved in the abduction, he would take drastic decisions regarding the reconciliation process. Hamas has said that it's considering setting up its own unity administration with other factions in Gaza. So it's already looking extremely shaky. And the fact of the matter is now that national unity, the government of national unity, exists in name only. It doesn't actually exist on the ground.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to end this rolling coverage. We do thank you for that. Sharif Nashashibi, journalist and Middle East analyst, talking to us there from London. Also, Sohail Natur from the Democratic Front of Palestine, who spoke to us from Beirut. Many thanks.